Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnavad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Status Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Shishi Radha Radhanath Ki. Sri Giri Govardhan Ki. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki. Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Gopremanande. All glories to their assembled devotees. All glories to their assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 30, description of adverse, fruitive activities. And we'll read verse 16, and which doesn't have a purport, and then we'll read verse 17, which has a purport. Okay. So first of all, verse 16. Vayunot kramatotara kafa samruda nadika kasha swasha kritayasa kante gura gurayate. You don't have this verse on your sheets, do you? 16, no. Okay. So translation. In that diseased condition, one's eyes bulge due to the pressure of air from within, and his glands become congested with mucus. He has difficulty breathing, and upon exhaling and inhaling, he produces a sound like gara gara, a rattling within the throat. So verse 17. Shayana Parishochadbi Parivita Swa Bandube Vachamano Pe Na Brute Kala Pasha Vasham Gata Shayana Parishochadbi Parivita swabandhube Vachamano pina brute Kalapasha vashamgata Shayana parishochadbe Parivita swabandhube Vachamano pina brute Kalapasha vashamgata Shayana parishochadbe Parivita swabandhube Vachamano pina brute Kalapasha vashamgata Shayana, lying down, Parishochadbe, lamenting, Parivita, surrounded, Swabandhupe, by his relatives and friends, Vachamana, being urged to speak, Api, although, Na, not, Brute, he speaks, Kala, of time, Pasha, the noose, Vasham, under the control of, Gata, gone. Translation. In this way he comes under the clutches of death and lies down, surrounded by lamenting friends and relatives. And although he wants to speak with them, he no longer can, because he is under the control of time. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. For formality's sake, when a man is lying on his deathbed, his relatives come to him, and sometimes they cry very loudly, addressing the dying man, "Oh, my father, oh, my friend," or "Oh, my husband." In that pitiable condition, the dying man wants to speak with them and instruct them of his desires. But because he's fully under the control of the time factor, death, he cannot express himself. And that causes him inconceivable pain. He's already in a painful condition because of disease, and his glands and throat are choked up with mucus. He's already in a very difficult position, and when he's addressed by his relatives in that way, his grief increases. So I'm going to read both verses 16 and 17. Vayanot kramatotara kafasam rudanadika kashashwasha kritayasa kante gura gurayate. Or it's maybe gara. What is it? It's gura. In that disease condition, one's eyes bulge due to the pressure of air from within, and his glands become congested with mucus. He has difficulty breathing, and upon exhaling and inhaling, he produces a sound like gura gura, a rattling within the throat. Shayana parishochadbi, parivita swabandhubi, vachamano pina brute, kalapasha vashamgata. In this way, he comes under the clutches of death and lies down, surrounded by lamenting friends and relatives. And although he wants to speak with them, he no longer can, because he's under the control of time. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Dharane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkap Trulibhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Yes, so this is the whole step-by-step description of the passing away of a person. And of course, I gave the class on Wednesday, which describes how the foolish family man remains attached in his family life, even though his position has become sort of embarrassing. If the husband, father, if he thinks, or as we mentioned the other day, if even legally he's actually the head of the family, but now he becomes incompetent, well, progressively more, until finally completely incompetent. It's a great embarrassment, but he doesn't feel embarrassed. This is the problem. If he felt embarrassed, then as we read the other day, then he'd think, oh, let me get out of here and at least conclude my life in some sort of respectable or reasonable, at least, condition. But no, he ends up, we read the verses, you remember the other day we read from the first canto, the story of Dhritarashtra leaves home, how Vidura was sort of chastising, you could say, but in another sense just pointing out that look at you. Stop this. There's a higher path. So anyway, that we were reading, that was verse 14. Then I was not here, unfortunately, but 15 you read. He remains at home just like a pet dog. He used to be the leader, the head, at least in many cases, thinking like that. But now he just becomes like a pathetic little scrap of a human being. And now here, 16 and 17, death is coming. Death is just coming. And from that condition, it's sort of amusing in a certain sense. From that condition which we read the other day, which I read the other day, to the point of death, it's only 2 verses. That's quick. From a sort of pathetic elderly chappie who's just sort of hopelessly wasting his life. I mean, the last days or last period of his life. Probably he's watching television, the Muppets. My father was watching the Muppets. My mother complained to me, "What's he doing?" But very quickly it goes from that pathetic, very not respectable condition of life to actual death. So anyway, that's what's described here. It's later on in the Bhagavatam, it's 7th or 8th canto, I think it's 8th actually, where there's a description of the personalities of different stages of life. The personality of old age, the personality of death. Yeah, there are personalities, there may be personalities of these different stages and conditions of life. And what's described there is that as a person progresses, not really progresses, but I mean you could say, but goes from middle age into old age. That's an interesting transition. From youth to middle age, sort of being young enough till you feel that things have actually deteriorated a bit. But when that's from youthfulness or sort of maturity into middle age, it's a bit of a rude awakening when you see that actually my physical condition has deteriorated a bit, even just a bit. But when you go from middle age to old age, I actually read yesterday, I can tell you it was sort of interesting, an article somewhere by someone, and it was called, "When do you know that you have made the transition from middle age to old age?" And he said it happened to him in that he was having a bath, as in bath, not a shower, and he stood up in the bath to step out and fell over and hurt himself and went to the doctor. And the doctor said, it will really hurt for 2 weeks. After that, it'll reduce. And then he wrote this article, and he said, it seems I've moved from middle age to old age now. But anyway, old age, according to the Bhagavatam, as I recall, it's the 8th canto. Anyway, it's definitely the Bhagavatam. Old age is a woman, Jara. And when you transition from middle age and you really enter old age, then you meet Jara, this woman, old age, personified. And she, as you really enter into old age, the way it's described there is she embraces you. Yeah. Means that, the different symptoms and the feelings and the discomforts of the different aspects of old age, they really establish themselves within your physical condition. It's like her embrace. Then after a while, as is said there, after a while she says, I'd like to introduce you to my brother. You'll find him interesting. He wants to meet you. Come, I'll introduce you. And what's the name of her elder brother? Death. Yeah. So she hands you over. She hands you over from old age to death. Bhagavatam's full of, there's so many graphic descriptions of reality. I remember when I was young, like in my teens, sometimes bringing up to friends, we would talk about this and that and different things in our youthful lives. And somehow, sometime, I would raise the subject of death. And they would say, no, we don't want to talk about that. It's depressing. Let's talk about something else. Bhagavatam, it's not that it's depressing, it's just reality. All these things. So looking around, I see the youngest. Well, you're 25, we learnt the other day. You're more than 25, aren't you? I thought so. What's your age? And you're 50 or 60? 64! And what's your age? 31. So you're number 3. Yeah. 25. It's not so young. You're on the edge, like 26, 25, 26, I've read or heard, is when you're sort of at your peak physically. 25, 26. And I remember in 1976, I was 25. Yeah, 25. Coming back from India, my first visit to Mayapur, Vrindavan. And in those days, India was much more demanding physically. Wow. It was much harder than it is now. And I remember coming back and feeling like, wow, survived that. And then it appeared to me that, maybe I've just gone over the edge from the developing to the starting to deteriorate stage. Anyway, maybe not quite, but I do remember when I was 28, noticing, it appeared to me that there was, some slight but noticeable deterioration. So, yeah. But then what to speak of when you meet Jara? Jara, she embraces you. As we said, it means that the conditions of old age, they sort of set in to your system, your physical system, maybe your mental system too. You may end up worrying a bit. Am I forgetting things more than I used to? These are important questions. Interesting questions. So, here then, this person is right there. Jara, old age, has basically handed him over to old age, to death, mrityu, and it's just sort of like when you go to the doctor, new doctor you haven't been to before, you got to fill out the documents. Who you are, where you're from, your medical insurance if you have, and all these types of things. And then the doctor sees you. You don't just walk in, the doctor grabs you and goes over you. You got to sort of log in, check in. So it seems like this here, that this person, old age, has really handed him over, but he's got to be logged into the system first before death really does his thing. Don't mind me putting it this way, please. I think it's like that, because here, his eyes bulge due to the pressure of air from within. His glands become congested with mucus. He has difficulty breathing and exhaling, inhaling. There's this gura is this, what the Sanskrit says, gura, a rattling within the throat. And then now he's checked in. He's moved into the system. Like if you go to the hospital, you've got to spend some days in the hospital. Same thing, you've got to fill out the documents. Then they take you. So he's filled out the documents. Now, time of death is there. So under the clutches of death, he lies down, surrounded by lamenting friends and relatives. He wants to speak to them, he can't. And they, as Prabhupada describes, they lament. Sometimes they cry very loudly, addressing the dying man. Oh, my father, oh, my friend, oh, my husband. Yeah. You put my name in the will, didn't you? Yes. I'm sure that's there a lot. I'm sure it is. And it's interesting, Prabhupada, he gets into the mood sometimes. He gets into the mood. And in this case, he's in a particular mood for formality's sake. The relatives and friends and others come and, oh my, this and that. For formality's sake. But it may be that concern about the will is more prominent in their minds. And, we read in the 10th canto, you may remember, we read every year on Janmashtami, at least I do, how who was it? It was Rohini. Had a miscarriage, wasn't it? Was it Rohini? It was Rohini. Had a miscarriage. Was it Rohini or was it Devaki? Devaki, okay. And it's stated there very clearly. So she had a miscarriage. Oh yeah, it was Balaram, had been in her womb. She apparently miscarried, but it wasn't exactly that. He was transferred to Rohini, who is Balaram's mother. That's the relationship. So it appeared to be, though, for Devaki it appeared to be a miscarriage. And the Bhagavatam says that all the people in the palace, including Kamsa, displayed, like emotions. Oh, dear, what happened? You had a miscarriage. But it's described there that Kamsa was acting as if he was concerned, but he wasn't concerned. And, you could check there. It definitely says he wasn't concerned. He just put on a show just to appear to be sort of socially correct. It may be that others put on a show also. But Prabhupada definitely, the way he's putting it here, for formality's sake, it definitely means that there's a show going on. And, I'm sure we've all been to numerous funerals. I've been to so many. And you get sometimes, it depends. I remember going to the funeral of Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu's wife. She was somewhere in her 30s, I think. Yeah. And, we did our program. There was kirtan. Some of us said some things, and then there was more kirtan. And Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu was dancing in the kirtan, really dancing in the kirtan. And I think I heard afterwards some of the relatives were saying that why he looks like he's happy, isn't it? I remember that vividly. You were dancing in the kirtan. You're really dancing in the kirtan. So, to what degree it depends, for formality's sake. Like you see in these funerals, the last funeral I was at was when I was in Mauritius last time. It was the end of 2019, before the pandemic hit. And one devotee passed away he was like a real character, divorced from his wife, although they still shared the same house, but I think different parts. And at the end, one daughter, as the body got put in the hearse and they're about to go, or they're actually moving away from, he lives literally next door to one of the temples. The daughter went running after the hearse. You've seen that, haven't you? Running after the hearse. It's not the first time I've seen it, but the last, because it was the last funeral. And one wonders, what's really going on. And Prabhupada says here, for formality's sake. So, obviously Prabhupada's assumption is that it's not really heartfelt. Maybe it is. In some cases, we don't want to be judgmental too much, but Prabhupada is definitely putting it here that it's for formality's sake, so people will think that, you're feeling like you're meant to feel, or yeah. So anyway, that's an interesting consideration. It's an interesting consideration. To what degree is it just for formality's sake? To what degree is it like real feelings of, in Sanskrit, viraha bhava, some emotions of separation, vipralamba? And to what degree is it just a formality that, people, they're watching me, better show some emotions, that sort of idea. But anyway, so that's something we can think about. Generally, it's assumed to be genuine, I think. Anyway, I don't know. But it's something you can think about the next time that you're at such an event. Observe, the immediate relatives and consider, how do they really feel, actually? It's interesting, just interesting. But then, but it may just be more on the level of formality, and they may, particularly if they're really immediate relatives, they may internally be more concerned about how much am I getting in the will. It's definitely a concern. It's definitely a concern. What am I going to come away with? But anyway, here's the situation. It is happening. The process of dying has started. I mean, it's already started even when you're just 25 and you're the youngest. What to speak of when you're 29 or 31 and 64. I was there once. Yeah. They're just different stages in the process. So at this particular stage, the dying person, as Prabhupada puts it at least, wants to speak with them and instruct them of his desires, as if he's still the head of the family. Express a few desires. Please do this and look after this one. But it's meaningless. It's meaningless. And it's really meaningless because even though he wants to make some meaningful instructions or something like that, but because of the attack of death, the embrace of death becoming firmer and firmer, can't say anything. Can't say anything. Yeah, if you've ever heard about when people have a stroke and they, that to that degree that they lose the capability to speak, they want to speak, they can't speak. And, I've heard some people who recovered to the point of being able to speak and write and so on. It's like you're in another world, they say. You're just in another world. And the other people who you want to speak to and who are speaking to you, they're just somewhere else. They're just somewhere else. And as Prabhupada says, it causes him inconceivable pain. And for them also, they want to express, for example, sometimes they want to express, can you turn me over a bit because, it's uncomfortable, but they can't. And they just have to stay uncomfortable. And not just uncomfortable, but in great pain. So like this, he's already in a painful condition because of disease, and his glands and throat are choked up with mucus. And when he's addressed by his relatives in that way, his grief increases. What is recommended? Oh yeah, it was in yesterday's verse. Better to leave home and die without the family's knowing. That's what, you gave class, yeah. Oh, you gave class. Yeah. Better to leave home and die without the family's knowing. It's considered to be a glorious death. Or this devotee Pankajangri Prabhu who passed away just a matter of days or a couple of weeks ago now. He had said before it all started happening, he had said that I'm praying to Krishna for a very fast death so I can just be gone. And it was almost like that. It was very much, not exactly like that, because it took about a week. By the time he became just really incapacitated, to the time he passed away was plus or minus a week. Yes, so Krishna consciousness, of course, Krishna consciousness means to prepare ourselves for that. Sometimes as devotees, we get into a situation where, say, death is possible, some more serious disease sometimes, and then we recover. And when we recover, we feel, that's nice. That's good. Sure, I'm glad I didn't die. But don't worry, the time will come and you won't recover and be able to feel, that's good, I got over that. So Krishna consciousness means to prepare ourselves by accepting the reality, first of all in principle, like the idea, and then preparing our consciousness by, first and foremost, really serious chanting of the holy names, really trying to chant attentively. You may have heard when we do seminars on japa, sometimes we say there are 3 rules, like laws, 3 rules of chanting japa. The first is to chant attentively. The second is to chant attentively. And the third is, by any means, by all means, do your best to chant attentively. Yeah. So that's it. Because you never know when the time of death will come. But whenever it will, but you got to ready yourself as much as possible. And the first step is to cultivate very attentive chanting. Then other, positive types of practices and developments can take place on the basis of that. Like, for example, not letting your mind wander off and daydream about the good old days, or what the good old days could have been if they really were to be the good old days instead of, the bad old days. So happy to put them past us. Instead of that sort of daydreaming and so on the basis of that very, at least the strong attempt to really chant attentively, then to become self-controlled and not let the mind wander off and daydream about what was, what could have been, what might have been, these types of ideas. Yes. And like that, just in general like that, to get one's focus together in Krishna consciousness. So, otherwise it can be, even for us as devotees, it can still be a very challenging experience of difficulty and pain. So yes, of course, when the devotees surround you, if you leave your body in the temple, as we all know, various devotees have, and devotees gather around and they chant, then at least you can know that they're not doing it as a formality. They're doing it from the heart, which is nice. It's very nice. So, but from this whole description, which is continuing tomorrow, and then on, I guess, Tuesday will be the next Bhagavatam class, yeah? Oh, I see. Okay, so on Tuesday, there's another couple of verses which lead up to the appearance of the Yamadutas. Oh, Krishna, oh my Lord. He's not prepared, you see. He's not prepared. So therefore he's in this pathetic condition, just lost and suffering. But for devotees, at least if we do our level best to actually prepare ourselves, then our departures can be glorious. They can be glorious. Yes. And the devotees can remember us in very positive ways, including how we departed. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any comments or questions, devotees? Yes. Oh, I see. Shh. Really? In Hindu society? Really? Wow. And they would get the family members going, I guess. This is how we're meant to do it. That's interesting. Thank you. Oh, yes. So Mother Rangadevi made the point that in the past, here in this country, they used to have professional mourners who would come to funerals and just go into like great lamentation. Yeah. Like Academy Award lamentation. Which mourning company shall we get? Which do the best mourning, the most dramatic? And I guess they cried Because it's possible to make yourself cry. I think it's not easy, but I guess with practice you can do it. At the drop of a hat when called upon. Any other? Yes.
Sometimes we have a dream where you want to talk and you can't, you want to walk and you really can't. Could that be a re-experiencing of the previous days?
It's possible. It's possible. Well, okay. The question is, sometimes you have a dream in which you can't talk, right? You can't communicate. Could it be recollection of previous death, one's death previously? Because we've had plenty of deaths. And I would say it's possible. Memory is such a thing, it's definitely possible for it to extend back into previous lifetimes. Definitely possible. Generally we understand it doesn't, because the experience of death, and particularly the experience of rebirth, is so powerful that it sort of overwhelms one's like immediate conscious awareness. But, we definitely hear reports of people who've remembered things which were not from this lifetime, and they're shown to be true. So I would say it's possible. Yes.
I recently saw advertisement for exactly the same thing. It was for a charismatic church, but there was a whole list of services offered, different price range, and they'll step up the intensity of the morning. The top, the last one that you pay the most for is when the mourner actually throws themselves onto the coffin in the grave.
Wow.
Church, so there's
Really?
from small sort of soft sobbing in the back bench of the church to that. So there's a whole
Okay.
process.
So Hemalata Devi Dasi said she recently saw an advertisement in a paper, was it? Or just an advertisement from a charismatic church of morning services. From, the cheapest is quiet sobbing at the back, and the most expensive morning service is where the professional mourner throws himself or herself onto the coffin when the coffin is in the grave, and then comes out, or do they stay? We assume they come out. Anyway, that's just a joke, but wow, that's really quite something. Shio, this material world. Oh my gosh. Do you want to add something? Yeah?
I'm sure Prabhupada's disciples are feeling separation when they saw him in such a situation that's about to leave. Also, the Bhararaj Prabhu was saying that one person was sitting in the audience at that time, and Prabhupada said that one person is praying for him to really die. I haven't seen that he just left. But that's in memories I lost that.
Really?
Yeah. So I just want to know, I'm sure that the experiences of the disciples, they will feel much separation for Prabhupada leaving. You said that Prabhupada came in he was very sick when he came to England.
Yeah.
What was your experience when you saw him in that position?
Okay, so if I have to... Anyway, that's a little complex, but Prabhupada said that someone in the audience was praying for him to die, is it?
Well,
or Bharadraj. Or Bharadraj. You know, Bharadraj was the first devotee to come from Vrindavan after Prabhupada passed to Bhaktivedanta Manor, and he told us the whole story. Wow. At least an hour and a half or 2 hours, the whole story. But anyway, you know, if the question mainly is what was our experience when Prabhupada last came to England, I remember very vividly that I remember Prabhupada coming out of the, you know, the inside part of the airport on a wheelchair. And, you know, we had never seen him in a wheelchair, and he really looked frail. He had lost a lot of weight. He didn't look, normally he looked kind of effulgent golden color, something like that. But now his body looked kind of gray. However, I do recall not thinking at all that Prabhupada's about to leave this world. Yeah, I remember that very clearly. You know, yeah, Prabhupada was there. But not like, wow, looks like Prabhupada's going to leave. I guess it was just, you know, I was, 26 or 7, 26 or whatever. And just like naivety to not think about it. But I remember when I was actually told, the temple president called us in one by one and told us individually that Prabhupada had left. It was like, what? You know? Can't be. How could it be? Not like the inevitable has happened. Yeah. So, because there was just, you know, maybe it's very much connected with the naivety of youth, but there was definitely amongst many devotees, there was not the, you know, either you could say the idea Prabhupada was just going to carry on, or you could say there just wasn't the idea that he was going to pass away. But when he did, sure, the emotion was incredible. It's really incredible. For days. Basically, other than the deity worship, the whole movement stopped doing anything. And then restarted after a few days. Few devotees, well, the pujaris carried on. Few devotees decided just to go out and distribute books. Same day, they found out, because they felt, you know. I mean, it's also true, obviously, that, you know, Prabhupada, he's still with us. So we should just serve him. But otherwise, the movement basically came to a standstill for some days. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.